My name's Aidan McDowell. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Unique Learn.
Well, you'll have a minute to tell us about what you are building. Are you ready?
I am.
You have a minute, go ahead.
Libby teaches users about the benefits of a healing method called tapping.
So we're building a platform that essentially creates learning profiles for students.
What is the input? What is the output?
Real estate marketing is still stuck in the days of the 1860s.
Give it to me like I have no idea.
Essentially, if something is too hard, you're not going to want to do it. And if it's too easy, you're not going to want to do it.
How do you charge?
Anything that's working with ChatGPT is doomed.
That doesn't mean the idea doesn't have legs, but now you have to think, what about my app? I'm not hearing any of that from you guys yet. And maybe that's the entire pitch. Welcome to the feedback loop. How many in the crowd have been to the feedback loop? Fantastic, love it. The feedback loop has been a special event over the past couple of months where we bring together a batch of founders to hear the pitch and the concept and then give feedback on the essential storytelling that a founder does, because so many founders are held back by that 1 minute pitch, that elevator pitch, the thing that can help them recruit, help them sell, help them raise money. And so it's been a really great engine for hearing very early stage stories and creating hopefully an inflection point for those founders moving forward to tell their story a little bit differently and a little bit better. I'm Sherveen, I'm the founder and CEO of Free Agency. We provide Hollywood style representation for tech talent. I'm an occasional angel investor and in general love supporting founders in this way and supporting storytellers in this way. Mike, you are a friend of mine, a superconnector in the world of tech in New York. He made a face, but he knows. But give the crowd a sense of who you are from a more resume style background or, kind of your self-description.
My background, I'm a kind of a weirdo in venture capital. I'm the son of two psychologists. I was a psychology and economics geek growing up. My first career, I was a teacher for students with special needs in middle school in the South Bronx in Harlem for 4 years. I then was a behavior science-based consultant. After that, I joined a venture capital firm where I was their head of ecosystem, moving from loyalty programs and referral programs to content, events, community, et cetera. I then got really curious about applying behavior science to venture capital. And so I started a behavior science-driven venture capital fund. I said, for a company to be successful, how do you get to the most revenue possible, the best exit with the least money raised? I look for companies that really are understated, super boring, but are interesting to the customers and they're willing to pay a lot. So I invest pre-seed and seed. I've probably looked at this point at about 20,000 pitch decks. I've helped probably a few hundred founders in terms of their fundraising strategy. And I think I've probably helped founders source about $50 million worth of capital through a bunch of events I run. If you are somebody in New York City, I run, I think, 104 different communities right now across founders, investors.
104.
People know me as the community guy, I guess. Different sectors, different stages, different geos, different entity types. So I try to make everything a little bit easier. The name of my fund is called Generous Ventures, kind of just fits with what I try to do.
Well, and I think one of the really interesting portions of what you do that I think will be relevant here is the part where you connect founders to investors or investors to each other, where there's this thing that an investor has, obviously, and you have as an investor, where it's hearing the pitch and whether you think you want to put your money where that founder is going. But there's also the thing that you often do, which is you think about two people. You think about the dynamics between two people. You think about introductions. You think about introductions and the context of a firm, of an angel, of a founder to each other. And I actually think that could be really interesting in how you hear pitches. Do you hear things differently when you're trying to make an intro versus when you're trying to invest?
Oh, for sure. I mean, so I've run a deal flow call amongst investors to investors for about 5 years now. We're doing 56 in, 57. It's a whole different conversation when it's founders to investors and investors to investors. They can be more blunt, saying, hey, here are my lingering questions. Here are the things that I like about them. I recognize their risks. A lot of VCs, frankly, are hesitant to give direct feedback because if you're just not compelled that the founder is the one to execute this company, I'm not going to say that. But I think a lot of what founders wish they got was just, what are the things I need to fix? What are the things that aren't there? For me, I think about what investors would take an intro. Is it going to be 90% of people at your stage and sector? Is it going to be 1%, which you might still found the right investors for you. It's just going to be much harder. So long story short, the clearer the founder gets information from the investor on what they care about, the more clear the feedback will be.
Well, I love the idea that you have, your ear to the back rooms essentially, and hearing what, again, investors struggle sometimes to tell founders, which again, I think will be useful in the context of what we're going to do, which let me get to what we're going to do.
Cool.
Founders are going to get up here. They're going to have a minute. to give us the story, the narrative, the inside that lives inside of them, not the deck, not the demo, but again, the pitch. After that minute, we're going to go back and forth. We're going to ask them questions to clarify. We're going to give them pitch feedback, probably about 5-6 minutes per founder. And hopefully by the end of the night, again, a batch of founders who, first of all, have gotten the crowd excited about what they're building, but also hopefully have gotten the feedback to put them into a different inflection point as to their startup journey. So with that in mind, let's get our first founders up here and give them a big round of applause.
Cool.
What are your names?
I'm Leland Crane. I'm a cinematographer, 30 years in the business here in New York.
And I'm his wife and co-founder, Victoria Crane. I've been launching SaaS products on top of AI for the past 5 years for venture-funded startups and for bootstrap startups.
Well, you'll have a minute to tell us about what you two are building. So great to meet you both. Are you ready to tell us what you're building?
Yes.
You have a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, movies and television start with a script. Visual storytelling has its own language. Right now, you guys are in a 2-shot. Mike and Sherveen, you have your own close-up, and there's a wide shot. So how do we get
from a script to a visual storytelling?
First step, shot list. Very simple. We have to have a list of our shots. What the hell we're going to do during the day. So Shotlist AI is our company. We help filmmakers make their shot list in a more efficient way, smarter, faster, using AI for the first draft.
We generate a shot list, better shot list within minutes rather than days. We launched in January.
We now have 700 users worldwide, 42 countries. We spent $500 in marketing.
And that's a minute. Good job.
Cool.
For the record, you also have a close-up shot. Just want to, it's not just
Okay.
I was not aware of that. I was told otherwise by the camera crew.
It's on this angle. It's on this angle.
Oh, I guess
Now we know.
That's super interesting. Let me ask 2 clarifying questions first before we kind of dive in. First is when you say using AI to support their first draft of shot list, are you talking about the content of a shot, the organization of the shot list? Are you talking about how the shot list is then put into the rest of the production workflow? What are we talking about?
We're talking about the content of the shot.
Okay.
I brought that, right? I mean, this is a mock commercial we made for Mikey's
I'll use my
sneakers.
close to show people.
Yeah, Mikey's sneakers. So each shot has a bunch of parameters: a close-up, the name of the shot, the type of the shot, the what's in the script saying what's happening in the shot, what lens is being used, is it on a dolly, is it on a crane? All those parameters are in drop-down menus now. You don't have to type anything.
Second question is, tell us for, obviously with the feedback loop, I've got some experience with this, but for those who have zero experience or just a little bit, what's the current feeling of pain for people who are involved in this?
This is a very time-consuming process. Days, sometimes weeks, making up a shot list for a movie or a television show. Now you can do it much, much quicker, and producers are going to love that, and directors and cinematographers also, we see, love it.
And so a quick question for you, going from what was the process before to now, what is the input, what is the output? So I put in XYZ parameters, I get out XYZ. I'm just trying to figure out what the creativity box is in between.
Can I take this? I'm non-filmmaker, but the input is always a script. Okay. And so the filmmaker would read the script and imagine the movie in their head, and then they have to describe it painstakingly, step by step on a piece of paper. The current process is mostly manual on document or Excel spreadsheet. And for the most part, most filmmakers that I interviewed don't love it. Instead of that, they can put in their script, upload their script, and get a first draft that they tell us is almost 80% there. Immediately. So immediately, like it erases procrastination. It makes it streamlines the process. It gets you started. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they don't have the time to shortlist.
So let me get to one of the core questions for any product in this general sphere of approaching AI with something like this. Foundational models are going to get better and better and better, right? Whether it's OpenAI's models, Anthropic's models, Google's models. And it feels like, on first glance, that this is something that they could be pretty good at, especially as they get
It's
upgraded.
language, right?
Right.
They're good at language.
Right. So
We're using
it. You're using it.
Yeah.
But how, I guess
We're
the question,
agnostic in terms of what model we can use.
right, but the question becomes, can you price, against a foundational model? So if they're good at it at a native level, if, using ChatGPT, I can get, let's call it 70 to 80% of the value.
Well, you can't because we're prompting ChatGPT, so to speak, which is actually an API, but we have proprietary information that tells the large language model, this is the language you got to speak to talk to the filmmakers. And every time it reads a tiny piece of the script, it's being sent the entire language of cinema each time, and then comes back with a result. It's not learning the script.
In other words, if you put in a script in ChatGPT today and ask ChatGPT, can you return a shot list? It will return a shot list that will not be useful to you if you're a filmmaker.
What do you think?
So feedback I would start with is, I think when there are founders that are very much in their space, which is great that you have that bottoms up knowledge, being able to pull yourself back up to sort of the forest level view and saying, in this market, 5% of production time goes towards script making. Right now it is, and I was waiting for the difference of experience until you got to it at the end of, here's how long it normally takes, here's how fast we can make it. I'd say getting that up to the front, saying, building a shot list is a process that takes 5% of production time. And that time is equivalent to this much monetary value for an average movie. I think for people who have a background in this, CAA ventures, UTA ventures, they might know. Anyone who's a vertical SaaS investor will just want to say, tell me how big this market is, how much are they paying, what does that turn into? Two, I would say is, if you're making a bet on you, is it a distribution bet? Is it a technological advantage bet? So being clear on, is this, you're betting on us because we know all these folks or we have an organically natural product? Why is it that in this space where with one OpenAI update, things could go astray just based on what we see, saying, why do we win in those spaces? We just can get to everybody with a platform that they're not used to using and we know how to make it adaptable. So clear value prop, what the benefit is on monetary terms, because this is a business in the end. I can tell you have a passion for this and just saying, we also can get to the business side. Two, making sure we understand in this market that's becoming increasingly commoditized, how do we stand out on distribution, on knowing the customer, et cetera. And I think the third thing is thinking simply, all right, for us, one feedback is typically in a pitch, trading back and forth is really hard to coordinate and knowing who speaks when. I'd say one person, either half and then the other. It's very good to show you have teamwork. Can get very confusing and very distracting for them to pay attention to one person.
The answer to my last question, and this is like product and pitch feedback, needs to be 10 times better. It's not an answer today. I play with these models. I use these models. I know what you're saying. You make an API call, you pass context, you have structured calls, maybe you have chain of thought. It's all sorts of things that you could tell me. But every product in this space that says we're bringing ChatGPT or LLM style optimization to something with language says the same thing. Our knowledge is our moat. Our API calls are our moat. Our network is our moat. All those moats will die as a product gets good enough from a form factor basis. What I mean to say is, as ChatGPT improves, it won't just be the foundational model. And you can hear Sam, for example, talk about this all the time. He says he wants it to be more usable, more integrated in workflows. He wants it to be more multimodal. It's already more multimodal. The voice feature that they demonstrated with 4.0 can show text at the same time as it talks. So can it form a shot list? It's actually probably pretty close. Can it call cinema at the same time? No, it's actually really close. What's the difference in a shot list and a text reply?
A shot list is a very specific tool.
It can output a CSV. It can write Python and output a CSV.
Yeah, but a CSV does not help a filmmaker.
A CSV that it outputs that has all the context of cinema in a foundational model that's $0 above what they're already paying for ChatGPT.
Right, but where are they getting the context? I mean, the only place they can get the context is from experts like myself and others that are putting in the feedback.
I'll
that
put it
we've
to you this
researched.
way. I like the idea of helping filmmakers in this way. If that's what you're doing, I personally, this isn't pitch feedback, this is product feedback, think you're doomed, just to be blunt. Because that is going to happen. ChatGPT will be excellent at grabbing knowledge, worker context, because they're scraping everything, they're digesting YouTube videos. A lot of the data currently being input into ChatGPT in conversations. They can train on unless you press the "Don't train on my data" button. All of this
so
is going
basically, then anything that's working with ChatGPT is doomed.
Well, so here's the thing:
basically.
if you I don't know if you guys are startup people at all beyond kind of building this, but if you listen to the best VCs in the space of AI, exactly.
Right.
This is why so many are afraid of investing in AI startups. In fact, we're seeing a counter push. A lot of VCs are saying this is going to be a bloodbath. All of these companies are going to be deprecated by updates to the foundational models. So my encouragement would be, that doesn't mean the idea doesn't have legs, but now you have to think, what about my app? Is there structure to my app, collaboration and teamwork? Is there SaaS? And you said you have history in SaaS. Is there SaaS to this that could be forever competitive? Is there a way this integrates with the rest of the production workflow and the tools in the production workflow? I'm not hearing any of that from you guys yet. And maybe that's the entire pitch. Okay. Everything other than
of course,
the language.
You should understand that everything that you've talked about is in our longer pitch, right? I mean,
it has to be the pitch itself.
We have information about the size of the market, which is vastly underestimated by most people because they don't understand that it's content creators as well as filmmakers, which is enormous.
I'm a believer.
Right.
I'm a believer. My point is that should be your pitch.
I understand.
That should be your pitch.
Well, in the 1 minute pitch, so you'd rather
skip this part very quickly. That? 10 seconds. Here's the.
I would say you spend probably about 25, 30 seconds on the product and the reason for shots.
Right.
5 seconds, important part of production. I think you would have had more time there to go into that part.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
We got to the next one. But really believe in the problem you're addressing.
So
good
much.
luck.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
This is the hard part about all these AI startups building on these other models is, investors are getting cold feet.
Yeah.
What are you seeing from the investor communities that you run?
I think I'm seeing there's a lot of wear down in terms of anything that looks like it's simply a wrapper around it. They're looking for either a place where you have a platform being built that everybody's building on, developers being moved to that space where they're actively building, or you have a distribution where you can get to every customer within your specific space, and you just know it's a legacy industry or a very specific use case. I think the challenge is having something that's a very cool product that I certainly would use is hard to have a defensible business right now.
Right. And I think it goes to this whole concept of distribution is one of the focus points you have. It's like decide on something else and then take the AI portion of it as for granted. We are not going to attempt to be better in this space than the foundational models. We're not only going to call them, but we're going to say, hey, they're going to get good at doing the basic version of what we do, the 80 to 90% version. And so we're going to figure out how do we build the thing that people will pay for in addition to their ChatGPT subscription in this workflow. Yeah. That's that edge, that last 5% that you get people to pay for is all that matters.
Yeah, and I think the other challenge is there are many things that can launch well in Product Hunt, get to 1 to 2 million in revenue, and then once they hit that core population in the inner circles that get there, growing and expanding and hitting a point of inflection is the difficult part.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, with that, let's bring up our next founder. Round of applause.
Yes.
Welcome to the stage. What's your name?
Thank you. Colette Ellis.
Colette, nice to meet you. Are you ready to give us your minute pitch and receive some feedback?
I am.
Colette, so excited to hear it. You have a minute. What are you building?
So, hi, I'm the founder of Libby Health and Libby, L-I-B-B-I-E, which is short for liberation, because we are on a mission to liberate our users from anxiety and stress through the power of somatic healing. How we're doing that is we're building Libby, which is a conversational mental wellness companion that teaches users about the benefits of an evidence-based healing method called tapping. So based on the emotions that users share with Libby, she tells them where to tap and what to say in order to get relief. In addition, we've included things like self-care reminders and journals and mood check-ins so that it's a more holistic platform to support mental health and well-being. We're going to market by partnering with other women's health startups starting in the maternal health space, and we're also selling into companies to support employee wellness and DEI initiatives. I actually am a behavioral health coach, used to work at Calm, and have also been part of the Matter Health incubating program.
Good job. Under a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
First of all, solid pitch, by the way, right? I think, we're going to get into the weeds here, but a good job on that initial narrative. A lot packed in there, including good credibility at the end.
Thank you.
You want to go first?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess my first question is on this sort of somatic healing method, what does it look like in the market right now? How much of a trend is it? Are we seeing increased usage? How peer-reviewed is the actual practice? Just trying to get a sense of like the scientific backing of the efficacy of it.
Absolutely. So it's an evidence-based healing method. There are studies that show that it helps to reduce anxiety, stress, PTSD. It's used with trauma victims. So my idea was actually, how do we digitize this process? And that's why I thought about the idea of bringing it into a chatbot, because the points don't change, the meridians in your body don't change. It's what changes is the emotions that you're bringing to Libby. And so that's why we are digitizing it in this way, sort of calling it like a one-hit wonder of healing. So one emotion, one tap. And then in future versions, what we're going to do is do more rounds of tapping. And I imagine that our next somatic method will be breath work, bringing more breath work into the app.
Cool. And where are you at right now in terms of how far along you are with the product, in terms of acquisition? What's the status of that?
Yeah, so we have our current version of our app, which is a web app, and we do have subscribers. And we're also have worked with companies like Amazon and LinkedIn to support their employee wellness and DEI initiatives.
Cool. When you say you've worked with them, what does that look like? Is that you've held sessions with them, you've brought it to like their HR, CHROs and saying we've actually implemented it as a employee benefit on their programs internally?
Right. So we've done programs at Amazon. We did some work with their with their DEI leaders. So we did a self-care for DEI leaders. It's almost like who heals the healers within organizations. And in LinkedIn, we have established a relationship with their Black inclusion group. So we look at companies both, again, from an employee wellness standpoint to reach a broader audience, but we can also go in through the ERGs, whether that's a mental health ERG or more that are associated with affinity groups.
Two curiosities, but by the way, I just want to give some feedback based on that interaction just now. When you're an early stage founder and you have some big names that you've collaborated with, you've integrated with, you've partnered with, give that context of how upfront, because the defensive investor mindset of, oh, I doubt what this is, but you have a good answer, right? And like, give that good answer ASAP as part of, we've worked with Amazon on XYZ, so that the investor is not even left for like 5 seconds.
To think wonder.
Exactly. Let me ask a blunt question that I mean to get to the kind of answer. I've never heard of this before, this tapping, and I don't know much about somatic methods. How likely is it if I define myself as like weirdly Western medicine oriented, is this something that I would, if I read the research and you sent me a bunch of links, would I still be skeptical in your mind if I started this way? Or would you go, oh no, this is all very much like, you said there's some evidence-based studies, is it a lot and it's all in one direction? Or is this something some people believe in and others say, okay, we're still, science is not out on this yet?
What I love about it is also, because it is somatic and you are actually practicing it, you can feel the energy and the relief sometimes almost right away. So it is kind of like a doing is believing, but obviously the studies are showing that it is effective in these different use cases. So yes, there's a body of research, and what we're also doing, we've done small studies on Black women with anxiety to get proof also on the efficacy of our app in the delivery of tapping. And we want to do more of those studies to be able to prove those results, not just from tapping in general, but also how it's delivered through our app.
And what's the user experience of that? So you're in the app and it instructs you where and how long, and then you record and kind of track what you're doing. What else is going on from a user experience standpoint?
Yeah, sure. And so we also have mood check-ins. So we really want users to be able to understand what their mood is, what their emotions, and then we also ask them about their triggers, right? Because we want you to be able to know, oh, I'm stressed because, or I'm anxious because, to start creating that connection in your mind. So we have that both in the conversation with Libby and the tapping interaction, but we also have the mood check-in as a separate feature so people can dip into that if they want to. We're also curating our guided meditations. So there's some tapping meditations. There's also some regular mindfulness type meditations. And what we want to do is actually continue to build our community of practitioners so that more different types of breath work, mindfulness is part of the content in the app.
And do you imagine that a lot of this from a monetary standpoint is going to be in that B2B realm, or how do you think about it from a long term?
Yeah, so right now, we do have monthly and annual subscriptions. So we do have consumers that are subscribing. We're also going through practitioners to refer their clients, because we're not building Libby to replace a coach, a therapist, or a practitioner. Yes, obviously the B2B is the more profitable, but the sales cycles are also longer. So it's a matter of using these different channels and the partnership channels that I mentioned. We're working with Lovu Health, which is a maternal health startup. So we're able to reach more moms and moms to be in that space as well.
What do you think?
Couple quick thoughts. One, very clear. I can tell you're aligned with the mission of what you're building. If we're talking purely word economy, those first few sentences about the meaning behind the name, I think you could condense that to maybe 5 seconds or so. I think 2, if there's any feedback you've gotten from your users, even if it's a 30-day retention rate, if it's any efficacy of 45%, 90% of people report increased usage or increased benefits from it at that time, I think the biggest question you have to get over is for people that are not specialized in this realm. How much are the customers feeling it? How much are they sharing about it? How much are they paying for it? What's your conversion rate? Am I seeing an engine being built up where it's organic growth rather than some people are interested in it, they like it, they use it a bit? I think getting over that risk mitigation hump for people's minds and the investor side is going to be the biggest part.
Clear communicator. You're good at answering these questions really directly, so keep that up. I think where your pitch will struggle is probably with people like me who don't know enough and are default skeptical of new things they hear. And so like, how do you have kind of a collection where someone goes, okay, it's kind of like your data room or your version of a data room, where it's going, okay, go educate yourself. If you're curious about this from a user experience standpoint, if you believe I have a market, if you believe in some of the marketing language I'm beginning to produce, if you believe in my dynamics with practitioners or B2B, then go do this reading too. Because again, and I might be unique in not knowing a lot about this. In fact, actually, let's do it.
How many folks here are familiar with tapping?
Oh, more than I expected, but still a minority. Mm-hmm. Were you familiar?
I wasn't.
So it's a good mix, right? I think like that could be your approach, is decide to almost segment who you're talking to. I was talking to a friend who's actually building a legal tech startup that's different than all the other legal tech startups, but we're working on this pitch today, and I said very explicitly have the lawyer version and the not lawyer version.
Right.
Although interestingly, in his case, we're making both anchored on the non-lawyer version because we think the people who believe will want to ask questions and will already be excited. You might have a similar thing. The people who believe might just like skip you ahead a few slides.
Right, like I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
And even getting to a point where it's not just saying, hey, this is a practice, saying you might not be aware. If you take an audience of 100 people on the street in New York, about 60 of them are saying they've used it. So just to give a sense of, oh, this is a thing that I'm not aware of versus this is a thing that's not a thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very good job. Well
Thank
done.
you. Great night.
Super interesting. Did not know about tapping. Makes sense.
We know now.
Yeah, it makes sense as like a, I don't know if this is what some of what she was getting to, but the whole idea of a behavioral a reminder element, habit, kind of associating with, okay, what's bothering me. And but it's interesting from a health tech standpoint, those B2B life cycles can be really long. Monetization in B2C seems to be like challenging for a lot of those startups too.
That's why it's got to be a thing that's either very clearly being picked up by a lot of people that's just not being brought to the forefront and democratized, or it's going to have a very clear upfront efficacy.
The practitioner part could also be a way. There was a pitch the other week that was interesting. It was around this whole idea where the same thing she said, they're not competing with the practitioners. So it's like the practitioners should proliferate the app as a way to continue their practice or continue helping their patients through the exercise, as opposed to trying to replace them. So that could be a path too.
Sure.
Next founder up. Let's bring him up. Round of applause. I like the color of your shirt.
Thank you. Like yours.
What's your name?
My name's Aiden McDowell.
Aiden, are you ready to give us your minute pitch and get some feedback?
I am.
All right, you have a minute. Tell us, what are you building?
Awesome. So I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Unique Learn. It's a K-12 Edtech company. And everyone in this room has been a student at one point. And so I want you all to imagine yourselves back at your 6th grade desk. Your teacher just finished talking to the whole class, and they put a piece of paper down in front of you. Now, I almost bet that every single one of you is not imagining a fun and exciting piece of paper, right? This is the problem in education, and it's been that way for a long way. Over half of students and 66% of teachers are not engaged in school, and we're seeing that have a direct impact on performance. The US ranked 34th in math on the most recent PISA test in 2022, which was a 13-point drop from the previous test in 2018. That saddens me. So we're building a platform that essentially creates learning profiles for students that maps out who they are as learners and as people. And we're using those profiles to create personalized homework based on how they learn and what they're interested in. Teachers spend over 10 hours a week creating and grading material. We're totally automating that process. We're automatically creating the material using generative AI.
That's a minute. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, well, this one I'm going to go in because I'm a former teacher. I taught 6th graders, so very much been there.
You are the teacher in this imagination.
Yeah, so my first questions for you is what's different about this platform? What's in the graveyard of people who have done this? Because automated homework, automated individualized education plans have been approached what is your insight or what's your earned insight about how you differentiate this compared to everyone else?
Yeah. The meat of what we're doing is really in the learning profiles. So we're trying to build the most comprehensive and robust understanding of a student. It's essentially a predictive environment. We map out quantitative and qualitative metrics, things like working style, character strengths, quantitative stuff like Lexile, or for science of reading folks, reading level and those types of measures, quantitative stuff. And we're using those metrics to predict a student's performance. On the back end, every question is labeled. So we say, okay, based on how these questions are labeled and based on your history, I know that you'll get this question right 9 out of 10 times. Our ability to predict allows us to then optimize.
So optimize how? And I want to get even your reaction to this. Like, what is the optimization if I predict? Tell me about a prediction summary and a result summary.
Yeah, so Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, imagine a horizontal axis and then a circle. This is not actually how it looks, this is how I imagine it. Horizontal axis and then a circle. You want to push students towards the inner part of that right edge of the circle.
I'm so lost. Give it to me like I have no idea about the circle.
Essentially, if something is too hard, you're not going to want to do it. And if it's too easy, you're not going to want to do it. The average time spent in the New York Times crossword is about 3 seconds because people open it, look at it, and give up.
So what you're saying is the adjustment that you'd make based off of the prediction is to adjust the difficulty level of and almost like the energy required to start of a problem or a next question.
So that's what people have been doing historically, right? Adaptive learning models, right? They bounce the difficulty up and down, right? We're taking in qualitative measures, and the power of machine learning allows us to quantify inherently qualitative things.
So then what is the result of that still? I still want to pinpoint you that. Yes. So you said adaptive is adjusting difficulty. What does yours do?
Essentially, we can predict whether or not you'll get it right based on more than the difficulty.
What does that do? So I get that part.
So we can tailor it to different things. And let's say I want to put you in an environment where you're not going to get 100% on something because you get 100%, you feel like you've mastered it. It's too easy, right? Let's say I want to curate an environment where you're getting 78% on something. You're doing well enough to still feel confident enough to attempt, but challenged to the point where you want to continue going.
Teacher.
So going at this, I hear frameworks, I hear concepts. I'm finding myself still wondering, what is the input? What is the output in plain terms? Do I give a special assessment to my kids? I get frameworks in terms of how I differentiate my lessons so it's just right motivation. What am I actually seeing as a teacher? Because if you're trying to sell this to, a follow-up question, I don't want to burden it too much, is who are you selling to? Is it the teacher? Is it the principal? Is it the district? Because I'm trying to get a sense if I hear frameworks, that's great, but on a limited school's budget, what is the thing that says I'm going to be getting 10% better proficiency, I'm going to have less 10% burnout, I do my planning 10x faster. I'm trying to get a sense of input, output, true differentiation, and what is the value I get.
Absolutely. So there's a lot there. So first, we're selling top-down districts and schools, number one. Number two, what's the input and output? There's never...
Pause. Pitch feedback for him and everybody. This is a great learning moment. Thank you so much. When you answer a question like that, say why, even briefly, because it's a very clear answer, but we're targeting schools and districts because we think they're the most motivated, XYZ for every time you answer a simple question to an investor, you're actually not giving them what they want. They want a little bit of the why behind it. They can probably guess your actual answer or they don't care as much until you give a why. So what's the why alongside that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that feedback. The why is it's essentially a more scalable business model. I'm working with a school district in California right now. They're 20,000 students. If I went to one of their teachers, I have access to 30, right? So it's just more scalable in that way. And then another question I often get is private schools versus public schools. Private is theoretically easier to get into. They have a little more budgetary flexibility. Again, once you get in, you have access to 400 or 500 rather than 10,000, 20,000. What's the input and output? We never administer a diagnostic. We find that's a huge pain point for teachers and students in schools. Our machine learning models extract data from assignments, and then the end, if I got 2 more seconds from you in the beginning, I would have told you that we automatically grade everything. So we're saving teachers over 8 hours a week through the automation of creating and grading material.
Pushing on that a little bit, what are they extracting from? Are they taking screenshots of homework? Are they doing an automated programming in the printouts while they're digital? They're getting it from that. How are they actually getting the data?
Yep. So assignments can be printed out, done on paper. We have proprietary OCR models and vision models that can scan and grade that way. You can complete it digitally on a PDF and submit it back. You'll always get qualitative feedback. You'll get a traditional A through F grade to maintain that universal application. And yes, here you guys go. And yeah, to maintain that universal application, and the teacher's always in the driver's seat. They can regenerate assignments if they find that it's not fit for the student. They can always edit the grade if our models graded it improperly, in your opinion. So the teacher always has that flexibility.
Fair. Can I get some feedback?
Yeah.
I think this one, getting really clear on the value prop for folks, because I've seen probably in the general education realm, 100 startups are doing something on improved learning, improved teaching. So even if it's just a very specific earned insight, saying everybody's using digitized versions, we're doing OCR, so you can print it, just really honing in, because conceptually, yeah, it's important. It makes sense. We want to have it. But if I'm investing in a business, you've already got some headwinds when doing it in EdTech. So you got to be really clear of how you're slicing through this to say our distribution strategy, et cetera. The most successful companies I've seen are either very clear workflow optimization, compliance tech. The importance of learning is very high, but getting to a business case and actual expenditure so you have a successful startup that can benefit everybody at scale, you got to get much clearer on the business case of, we do exactly this, where people are finding other solutions or this is why they're saying yes to us. And also, if people are saying yes, let us know, because right now I say, great, I'm glad you care about education. Tell me about the business part of it.
I think you have the same challenge as Shotlist earlier, where if I had more time and I have more questions, because I think everyone can get behind your mission. I would ask more questions about your mission and product first, but then I would get to, well, the foundational models are going to get really good here. And so then a school district, a teacher can decide to give a framework as to a method of learning and then get an 80% output, but for zero cost, which especially for school districts can be really important. So that would have been where I go. So that's one thing I'll give you as like a watch out, because I don't fault any founders building these sorts of products. It's more so, we can kind of just predict, okay, here's the challenges that you're going to face. The next thing is, I still feel like I want to feel a little bit more. You feel mission oriented to me. It just seems true by the way you carry yourself in describing the problem, but I'm not getting the hero moment from you, right? Like, I'd love to hear a hero moment. You made us imagine something. I want to hear what you're imagining. I want to hear like what you think a classroom of the future could look like. I give this feedback to some people who are still in the early problem space, and you seem relatively far along in some ways, but don't forget to really give us your vision, because this might be too simple, but you might have something in your head. I think you probably do. That is this times 10. Paint the classroom of the future for us, right? Tell us that story as part of that pitch. Then you can work backwards to, here's my V1. And here's what's going to happen from here. But I feel like you're only giving us today 20% of it. And I want to hear the rest. Not today, we're out of time, but good job and good luck.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate your time.
EdTech, hard.
It's a tough one.
Do you have any favorite players you've seen in the EdTech AI combo space so far?
So the most compelling company I've recently seen was a company that's out of California that's building blazing fast compliance reports. The most boring space you can, but there are given reports whether you're building an individualized education plan for students with special needs or you're simply following compliance.
Because that's really, really, that requires patience, forms.
And bandwidth that teachers don't have.
Right.
I can
That's super
testify.
interesting.
Saying the things that teachers don't want to spend time on, that it's not their practice and their craft. And the founder who I met had been 6 weeks in and sold $150,000 in ARR right off the bat. And he had distribution leverage because he was getting invited to conferences. So the idea of, here's a very clear pain point. We're solving this thing, making it fast in a way that you're not getting. We have revenue. They want to pay. It's a very clear pain point that's being bought by districts and schools. It's like, that is the business layer on top of a valid problem. And teachers actually get the time back to do the things they do best.
It still has the eventual challenge of foundational models on some time horizon.
But that was a distribution play. So
Right. That's a really good point. If you know your distribution play, you move as fast as possible. You're being valued on that, not on the notion of the foundational models and the 10-year outcome.
You can either try to be the whale in the ocean, or you can be the crab on the bottom who's getting all the things that are going on below the surface.
Ooh.
So yeah, you can either be the one who's getting everything going on with the best model. You're just like, we have people that have things that are important. We sell it for them. We're covering the entire ocean floor. You're independent of the overflow, because these are not people that are trying to rise and see what the new wave is. They just want to solve the problem.
Right.
So it's my space of like, I love the boring things that are needs.
Needs today.
They'll pay. And if you can get to a lot of them fast, you can build a business that can grow and get a moat.
Super interesting. All right, let's bring our next founder up. Round of applause. All right, tell us, what is your name?
Craig Bromberg.
Are you ready to give us your 1-minute pitch and get some feedback?
I do.
All right, I love it. Well, Craig, we do too. You have 1 minute. Tell us, what are you building?
So, first of all, how many people are buying or selling or want to buy or sell homes this year? Anybody? 1 or 2 people. How many people know what's going to happen on August 17th? So on August 17th, there's going to be a significant change in the real estate business. And fundamentally, comes down to you're going to be forced to sign a buyer's representation agreement before you even go out and look at a home. And you're going to have to agree on either fees or percentage of what that's going to be. And it's going to be published, but you'll have to negotiate it. And this is before you even you want to take me out and see a home? Fine. So Homesy is basically a complete substitute in many respects for that entire process. What we've done is build an opportunity that's extremely urgent given what's going on October 17th or August 17th, excuse me. And that the basic idea is that we've created an opportunity for a real-time feed, AI that actually grades listings and tells you whether they're at a level of completeness. And the reason that's important to us is because we have a profile.
It's about a minute. We'll hear more. Don't worry.
Okay, yeah.
Let's give you a round of applause. Cool. Finish that thought. We have a profile of.
So we have a profile capability that goes room by room through your home because brokers don't have any incentive right now to actually profile your home. Their interest is actually 2 photographs, a purple paragraph of purple prose, and that's it. And they're there's nothing that makes an MLS listing have any real data characteristic that you could fundamentally use. Listings are fundamentally advertisements for agents. And so this basically turns this on its head. The more you participate in this capability, the more your home is seen. You suddenly have reach for your home. And that's never been the case in real estate previously.
I will share a small anecdote before we dive into the business. My mother has a house in Fort Lee where I grew up that she now rents, and Fort Lee, New Jersey. And it was shocking to me how little the agent wanted to optimize the listing, to the point where it's a family friend, and I just kept sending angry notes being like, can I yell at him yet? Like, this is just absurd, where if anyone lands on this page, there's no conversion theory whatsoever to the thing. And it's interesting to hear you say that it's an advertising or marketing for the agent. That now really makes that make sense to me, right? They don't care about the individual listing. They care about establishing a relationship with a buyer or a renter, which then allows them to sell some listing.
That's right. Real estate is one of the few what everyone calls sectors, industries, where actually marketing is still stuck in the days of the 1860s. It's based on inventory. If I want to sell you a phone, I'm not going to sell it to you based on how many phones I have left. I'm going to sell it to you based on the psychodemographics of the audience. And the reality of real estate marketing today is it's stuck on inventory control.
So how do you change it literally? I know you said going room by room, and you said some other interesting top level things. Bring us all the way to the user experience before we dive in.
Well, so the user experience is fundamentally this real-time feed, which is critical because
that doesn't feel like it lives up to the promise of the rest of what you're saying.
Correct. It's only one little piece of it.
Okay, tell us the stuff that lives up to that promise.
Well, the profile capability. Think of this as LinkedIn for your home, right? On LinkedIn, you have a real-time feed. On LinkedIn, you also have a profile capability. That profile exists. It's non-episodic, right? You keep building it over time, whether you're in a job, out of a job, looking for a job, doesn't make any difference. And that's the missing piece here, right? Real estate data today, listings are controlled, owned, and copyrighted by agents. This is a completely different way of thinking about it. You have a living profile. It changes as your home grows and changes. Most people live in a home, even with a 30-year mortgage, for 7 years.
I'm going to give you some feedback even as we continue to ask you questions, which is, I learned way too much as you went. In other words, too much of your product was just revealed to me, and I find it fascinating. This whole idea of continuously living profile for the home, but you started with this feed, and the feed to me, I don't know if you still mean like the feed of my profile or like an overall MLS style feed or things like that. For a lot of people building a business like this in an area that's well understood in some ways or well trodden, skip the stuff that's like assumed, the feed. I want to hear more about this profile. I want to hear more about like the idea of, as I live in a home for 20 years, I'm updating this thing. And by the way, then, someone who comes upon that page can see, well, I updated the driveway here. Here's how pretty my garden looks.
Exactly. So it's a room by room profile, and you add pieces to the profile.
Right.
And as you've added, you can actually swipe along all the pieces of your home. And not only that, but as I said, the more you do that, and it's data and storytelling, right? So it's a video, it's a drone shot, but it's also pre-populated data about the home that we know and that you've already, or that you can add to it. And every single room and every single amenity, the windows, the closets, so that it's a fingertips experience, right? And this is totally different than what we get from a listing.
Yeah, true. The one piece of feedback I have is I can tell you're passionate about the features. pulling from the features back to the art of the business and saying, okay, when we have a continuous profile compared to the realtor, what do we see come out of that? Because if we're looking for the value proposition, we have the value creation and the value capture. So if I say, hey, by having a continuous profile, we find that in example studies, we're finding 20% increase in asking price. We're finding a higher sell-through rate of the inventory. Those things we want to get to, because I'm like, yeah, it
or
sounds
even
cool.
show us not here because
Yeah.
we don't do it here, but show us the page if we were in a real scenario.
I'm happy to
and
show
it
you,
might not
right, exactly,
do well on
yeah.
stage, but
We
I think
actually
his
have
point
working
is
MVPs,
just
so
but I think his point is just so great here because there's so much that I think people already probably agree with you on the problems in the market today, right? And you got us to remember some of them in the beginning. Getting to the, hey, here's the business that we're building and here's how that business is going to thrive and the incentives that'll, because I think we still have those questions probably of
Absolutely.
like,
And-
how do we drive towards
And
that?
so let me give you, can I give you,
Yeah.
because I think that's exactly the right question. What
do it.
are the incentives? So, the incentives for the user, but also remember, we're talking about buyers and sellers. They have different incentives. And then there's the supply side in addition, right? How do we bring in brokers, contractors, designers without making them the center of the experience? The experience is focal to the consumer, not to those service providers. And that's the way we look at them. They're welcome to participate, but the value exchange is fundamentally between buyer and seller, directly connecting them, giving them recommendations that are ML based, whether it's about the home or about a topic interest. I'm interested in porches. I'm interested in dog rooms. I'm interested in whatever, you name it, good schools. And all those things are basically part of that feed, which is a social feed. And people can comment, add comments to it. And they can do the same thing in the room by room
Why do we have
analysis.
a social feed? I guess because you're saying it's interesting.
Sorry?
It's interesting to have a social feed. Is that why we have a social feed here?
We have
I'm
a
surprised
social
to hear
feed
there's a
because
social
it gives you an opportunity to connect deeply, person to person in real time.
So-
real estate is a real problem if it's not conducted in real time. It creates arbitrage opportunities for people to change pricing on homes.
Fair. How do you charge?
So it's freemium. This is our hypothesis at the moment. It's freemium, ad supported with monetization from subs, right? Whether it's I want an ad-free model, or I want greater data capabilities, or I'm actually a broker and I want to get this real-time data in a different way. Comps, super powered comps. These things don't exist today. There's been really de minimis since Zillow was founded in 2006. There's really been very little consumer-based innovation, right? There are plenty of things for brokers, Matterport with fancy cameras, all kinds of stuff. But for consumers, there's been very, very little. And there's one reason. And that one reason is that the monopoly that has owned real estate has found it better to create relationship-based sales. This is relationship-based sales between buyers and sellers directly, with the intermediaries essentially saying, oh, we could add to this, but we're not the focal point.
So can I get some feedback? I think there are businesses that we aim to build because we enjoy them. And I think there are businesses that venture capitalists will see, I invest in this, I could see this becoming 100 times bigger, and I could see this returning capital to the people I've promised to make money for. What I think I see here is we're looking for about three things: a very clear value proposition, a very clear business model that makes it sustainable, and a very clear position in the ecosystem where you have gravitas to actually build an entire platform around you. I hear the passion about the product. I hear this sort of normative view of what should be true and how real estate works. And I think it's translating that into here's how we build a business that people are willing to pay for, that they clearly want. Because what you have right now is you've built a room for a bar. And you say, like, we have a room, it's well adorned, we have good alcohol in here. Now we got to get a reason to come into the bar and buy the drinks because they say, this is where I got to be.
So I'm glad you raised that, because what we're doing right now is we just completely took apart our MVP and have built a completely new onboarding experience to actually do some very basic tests. Do people want to create and generate user-generated data about their homes? Will people pay a freemium?
So I'm going to interrupt you just for the sake of time.
Sorry.
Let me reframe. Yeah, let me reframe his feedback from my perspective. I think what he said is both of us probably believe, because we're like sitting here imagining your product, probably believe in what you're building, or it sounds really interesting. That's how I put it.
Sounds like a cool product.
And then we want your pitch. It doesn't matter what you're doing next. I mean, it does, but I'm saying that is not even his thing, right? His thing is you were so excited. And not in like a jumping out of you're like not too aggressive or anything. It's more so you're clearly so passionate take this to enough third parties who are not as passionate about this problem to contain it, because it took a while for us to get to the room that we both go, okay, then we get it. It took us a while to get to the social feed, all this other stuff. And if you bring it to enough friends, mentors, peers who then say, okay, just simplify here, here, and here. Because again, I don't know about you, but like I'm fascinated, and I'm not into PropTech pitches generally, but this one, everything you're saying about incentives and what the product could be makes complete sense to me. There are a bunch of questions I'd have, but that's where containing your pitch allows room for those questions.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like we're in the messy middle.
Yeah.
This is much bigger than the team that I started with. It's much bigger than, the product. It's fundamentally an ecosystem change. So we're talking to advertising companies to understand exactly, would you give us an MOU?
But again, you're doing it again.
Yeah. Well,
you're going a little too like it's advertising companies. We don't need advertising companies. We want to believe in the room, the feed, and that's the thing, right?
So we're testing that right now with a clickable prototype. That's what we're doing.
Like you said, we're rigorously testing. Here's what we're looking for.
Exactly. That's exactly what's going on.
Cool.
Very cool product.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mike.
That is a founder on a mission.
Yeah.
And a super interesting one.
And the tough thing is like when you want to pitch, you want to say, here's the whole iceberg of everything that I have learned. If you could get in my brain, you could see all the things.
Yes.
You say, yeah, but we're only going to see the tip.
Yep.
You got to show us the top of the iceberg that's compelling enough.
Well, and founders have the opposite problem sometimes, right? It's either they're showing too much of the iceberg or just the tip of the iceberg, and there's this perfect middle that allows someone to get excited enough to want to learn more, but not overwhelmed by the excitement of the pitch.
There's an elegance of a simplicity that is still deep.
Yeah, exactly.